Welcome everyone, this is Viking, and today we're going to take a look at BK-90s and the radar in the Viggen. As usual, we're going to line ourselves up on the runway, get it perfectly straight, and hit the reference button to fix our heading. Then second stage afterburner. Steady on the runway. Viggen's rudder is pretty sensitive. And we're at takeoff speed. Gear up. Third stage. Alright, let's back it off to conserve a little bit of fuel. Set the altitude hold, and now I'm just going to enter in a waypoint real quick. We're going to be trying to hit these trucks over here. Now, I could put in an exact waypoint, but that would sort of spoil the point of trying to find these guys on radar. So I'm just going to pick an arbitrary point in the general vicinity, let's say here, and then I'm going to, pardon me, and then I'm going to punch that in. So longitude is 55, 29, 29, latitude is 26, 47, 46. Looks about right. Assign it to waypoint 1. Then we will make waypoint 1 a target waypoint. And now we're going to program the weapons. The Viggen is, the BK-90s are pretty simple to program. We're going to go over to the visual aid page. BK-90, it's 91 XXX and 92X. 91 is altitude and 92 is pattern. We want a compact pattern because these guys are just all tightly condensed together here. And for altitude, we're going to say something like 180 meters, because we want to have a decently wide dispersal pattern. So, having made that decision, we're going to go 91180 for 180 meters. Enter. And for the compact pattern, it's 923, because 3 is compact. Enter. And we have programmed the weapons. And now we can just let the autopilot turn us towards the target with trim switch right. We've got the weapons dial on attack there. And we're going to fence it. With the BK-90s, it's not as important to set QFE. But I do happen to know that the runway I take off from has an altitude of 9 meters, and the target area has an altitude of 9 meters, so I actually don't have to change my QFE. Gonna turn on the radar, and we're gonna climb up to about 350 meters. 300 to 400 meters is a good altitude for doing radar scanning. I'm also going to raise my HUD glass. Alright, 350 meters. Set the altitude hold. Set the reference button, so this is the commanded altitude. And now we just have to travel about 100 kilometers. Fortunately, that goes pretty quickly in a Viggen, especially since we're not too concerned about fuel consumption at this point. Now, let's take a look at the radar. There's not really a whole lot showing up here, and part of that is because the radar gain is by default pretty low. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to pop into adjust controls and highlight radar gain increase and decrease. Also radar antenna elevation up and down. Those are good things to know about. Sorry about the noisy switches there. And so I'm going to crank up the gain all the way. And we're starting to see a little bit more detail there. Over here we see this island. It's a dark spot. It's... Oh, that's not an island, that's a coastline. And we can also see dark spots out in the middle of the ocean. Those are tankers. Can't really zoom in much further than this, but I assure you those are tankers. And I'm going to switch this from logarithmic to linear. And I'm going to use that to help me set my radar elevation. I'm going to crank it up and up and up, and now it's basically stopped. It's so high up. Bring it down a little bit, one button press at a time. See how we got that tiny little semicircle there? That's an area just beneath our nose that's not being scanned, so I'm going to hit radar elevation down, and it pretty much disappears. If we increase the zoom, or pardon me, decrease the zoom, increase the scale, we can see that we're still sweeping up pretty good all the way to 60 kilometers, although not much further. If I raise the radar antenna once more, then I can actually see all the way out to the full 120 when there's not an island in my way. But everything looks really coarse and blocky, so we're going to switch it back over to logarithmic. And at long distances there, at large scales, it doesn't show a whole lot of detail. And we actually are starting to run out of gas here, so I'm going to back it down to full mil. But at shorter ranges, you actually can see a fair bit of detail. It's not really evident out here on the ocean, but there seems to be a boat about 10 kilometers that way. Yep, there's a boat 10 kilometers that way. So you are able to pick up certain things, and it's especially useful when you're at sea. When you're over sea, when you're over the ocean, the ships really stand out. It's a black dot against a light background, and it's really easy to spot. Over land, it's a little bit trickier because this thing isn't like you're just looking at raw radar returns here. Nothing's being processed. And especially from low altitudes, relatively low 350, you don't get to see a lot of the detail of the terrain because we're just not far enough above it to be able to look down at it and see the detail. Now we're coming up to the general vicinity of the trucks that we want. We're about 50 clicks out, covered half of the distance. At 60, you still don't see much, but at 30, you really do start to see detail. Now, another thing about the BK-90s is they are gliders, and so they depend on your aircraft's speed in order to get them at their maximum range. So when we launch, we're going to want to be like we're going to want to be over Mach 0.8 for sure. Ideally Mach 0.9, 0.92, something like that. So we're going to kick the burners in again as we approach. But first, we're going to take this back down to 30. We're still not really close enough to see anything. Although we do get to see the contours of the coastline of this island, and there's a sort of a port up there, and as we get closer, we should be able to make out some of the finer details of the port. Not much, but I mean you can see sort of a black splotch there, and that's the sort of the forest and city over here. If we were a little bit higher up and could look down at it, we'd get a little bit more detail even than that, and I will show that off at the end. But moving back over here, I'm actually going to gain a little more altitude. Bring it up to around 400. And we can see, YouTube's video compression might screw it up, but we can see a distinct black dot right there. So I am going to slew my cursor over top of it, and now that dot is in the center of the circle. Alright, so we've got a pretty good idea where our targets are now. We've refined that. But what we don't have is an accurate own position fix. We're at 2-1 there. 2 means it's got no idea where we are because it can't do terrain mapping because we're over the ocean. So I understand why it's at 2. 1 means we might be off by as much as 1 kilometer, and that can mess up our target fix. So we're going to fly over some land to get a tear nav fix. We want this to say 50. If it says 3 something, then that means it's got a rough idea where we are, but it's still working out the exact position. And if it says 50, it means it knows exactly where we are. 30 is good. The drift has been almost eliminated. It has been eliminated, but we're not sure yet. And this is flat terrain, so it's having a little trouble figuring out where it is. But we're about to fly over a hill, and it'll be able to read the distinctive shape of that hill in order to get a tear nav fix of 50. All right. So now that we've got that, we're going to make a turn that bleeds off all our speeds, so 3rd stage afterburner. And we're up around 800 meters, which is way too high, so we'll gain some of that speed back by diving. And now we're down around 500 meters. And at 400, we're going to take it down to 2nd stage burner. I'm going to drop the antenna elevation just a little bit. And we're going to refine this. It's a little touchy, but that'll do. Then hold down the trigger. And when that bottom horizontal line comes inside the 2 vertical lines, we're going to release our weapons. Away they go. And we're going to kill the burner. We're going to turn away. We're going to set the autopilot, and we're going to watch these things glide in, right on target, and kill these things dead. It might have gone a little bit long. Let's watch the parachutes come in. Not bad, not bad. Now, I set the altitude nice and high because I wanted a good wide dispersal pattern because it's not super duper accurate. It's pretty accurate, but it's not like a JDAM or anything. Now, the question is, did we get everybody or just most people? I don't think we got everybody. I think we got like 11 out of 12. Let's check the F10 map. One guy with a tiny little sliver of health survived. Okay, so that was actually pretty good. Very successful run. And it all comes down to really refining the target location by using the radar. This thing bleeds off a lot of speed in turns, but it does turn remarkably well. Now, another thing we can kind of see here is like, and again, I don't know what YouTube's compression is going to do to this, but we can see like a horizontal line this way, and it branches off this way, and that's this road, and this road coming away from it. And as we approach the edge of the coastline here, we can see a sort of a pattern here. It's actually going to be better when we get a little bit closer. And I'm going to raise the antenna elevation to clear things up a little bit. That was too much. That's just right. And we can see like 1, 2, 3 bright spots. That's 1, 2, 3 square lakes. We can see the pattern of canals that we see down here. We can see a actually, it's just falling beneath us right now. But we can see how like this part of it empties out into the ocean. We see that here as well. It's you can actually get a lot of detail off the air-to-ground radar, and right now we're up at a pretty high altitude. We're up at 1,000 meters, which is very, very high up for the Viggen. We're gonna turn towards this thing where we've got some decent contours to the ground, and when we look down at them, we're going to be able to see those as well. Now I'm playing with the gain and the antenna elevation. Actually, you know what? This is not doing a great job of showing off what I wanted to show. I think we're probably a little too high. Like, I know it looks a bit like a jumbled mess, but once you get used to looking at this thing and comparing it to what you're seeing around you, this is a lot of detail. It really helps you to identify landmarks and sort of get a sense for what the ground looks like. And so when you spot something on your radar that's a little dot that might represent a ground target that you'd want to hit, you can look out at the world and sort of visualize where that would be. So, and again, we're seeing a fair bit of detail from that area over there, and playing with the antenna elevation a little bit. See, I smeared it. Raise the antenna. Raise the antenna. Now it's crisper. And this sort of looks like it's like we see the dark terrain right there, but beyond it we don't see anything because the radar can't see over it. But as we pass over this ridge right here, we're going to find that this white area behind it gets filled in with detail because the radar is able to map it. Let's speed that up a little bit, shall we? By the way, this fall blast light just indicates that our last weapon has been dropped. Sometimes that's useful to know, like if you're going on a bombing run, you want to know the second your last bomb has dropped, because you can carry like 16 of them. And when your last bomb is dropped, you pull away from the target. Alright, so as we head over this ridge, we're going to see this white area behind it get filled in. And the white area is just getting carved away. And we start to be able to pick up more detail. And we can see a white spot here and a white spot here, and that corresponds, I think, to I can't actually see physically what that is. I mean, that was not a great example. Basically, it seems like it's looking into this terrain. We're going to pass over a ridge coming up. That spot there, that spot right there is that thing. You can see the shape of that rock. I guess it was probably there. And again, I'm playing with the gain a little bit to make out the contours of this rocky ridge. And we see a black spot there and there. indicating, I guess, this thing and that thing, or now it'd be that thing and the further thing. That's what it is. So it's you know, it's an old radar. It's ground only. And actually, you know what? This is probably a stupid idea because this video has gone well and I don't really want to ruin it. But I'm gonna hot shot it up anyway. Yep, that's a road. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna land on the road. Because that is a thing that Viggens do. Oh, what do you know? I had the radar in C mode instead of land mode. Oops. It doesn't actually make that big of a difference. Air brakes out. Gear down. Pop this baby into landing mode. This was a bad idea. Bad idea. Going way too fast. Oh, there are telephone poles. I can't actually do this. Oh, this is a bad idea. Don't do this. Don't do this. You're nuts. You're gonna break your wings off. You're gonna break your wings off. Don't do it. Why are you doing this? Okay. So, gone a little bit off-road here. I didn't realize I was gonna have to dodge telephone poles, so now I'm pretty much stuck. I do not expect that I'll be able to get this thing moving again. And yep, it's stuck. But if it weren't for those telephone poles, I wouldn't have had to veer right, and I would have been able to do a road landing. Oh well, we can call a tow truck. The important thing is it's intact because dealing with rugged terrain is something that Viggens do. In any event, hope you learned a little bit about how the radar works and how the BK-90s can be targeted on the fly to blanket an area with cluster munitions. Thanks for watching. Cheers.